Hey everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch. Hey, today I'm going to show you how to use the border stamps from Lavinia. Here you can see the ones that I own. I have the border stamp in Ivy, that's LAV 320. Border stamp floral, LAV 321, the Zen border, LAV 366, the flower border, LAV 67. Now this border stamp I've had for a few years. This one has been retired, so it's kind of hard to find. This is LAV 370, the heart border, if you are interested in trying to locate that. A few of these borders also are retiring, so if you want to give this a go, you need to snag these as soon as possible. Before we get started looking at all of the other supplies that you're going to need to create a card or another item, let's talk about our Facebook groups. We have two Facebook pages. We have one Facebook group that is called the Bello's Design Lounge. And in that group, what you do is make things with Lavinia products and display them there to share with all of us so we can see your lovely creations. The other page, that Bello's Design a la carte, that's where we showcase everything else that Patty currently has in her shop. So, like craft consortium items, cardio items, sweet poppy, Nellies, anything you create with those items, that's the page you want to place those creations. That way we all can see what you've made. We're on other social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. You'll find some really nice stuff there also. And when you go to those social media platforms, all you have to do is search this, hashtag Bello's Designs. Okay, let's get started with the supplies that we're going to be using today. Now, as always, I do my best to get all the supplies here in the beginning of the video, but if I forget something, I will let you know, and you can always be assured that in the description box below, you will definitely find all of the items that I have used. So we are going to make a card. The card topper itself will measure 4 3/4 inch by 5 3/4 inch. This is a heavyweight card. It's approximately 110 pounds and it's 270 GSM. So it's a nice heavy weight. The card base itself will be 6 inches by 9 inches. It's scored at 4.5 inches. And like I said, this is 110-pound card, and it's 270 GSM. I like anything above those numbers to work with. Next, I'm going to be showing you how to use a Lavinia masking sheet. I've already pre-cut this sheet. It measures 5.5 inches by 6 1/4. You do not have to have that exact measurement, but it is important that the masking sheet will cover the card topper. And I like to give myself a little bit of an edge here that will stick to the work surface that I'm using. Next, I'm going to show you a little bit with ATC cards, and that is an artist trading card. I am using the rectangular shaped ones today. They measure 2.5 inches by 3.5, but there are also ATC coin cards. Those are round. Someday we'll do one with round cards. But again, what these are, people make little pieces of artwork and we trade them amongst each other. It's just kind of a fun thing to do, and I'll tell you what, I treasure every little ATC card that I have. So I'll show you how I do this along the way. The inks that I'm using today, I will be using the Elements inks in Olive, Blue Atoll, Russet Orange, and Sundance. I will be stamping all of the Lavinia Stamps in Nocturne. The stamps that I'm using today, this is an older fairy, but I really like her. I think she's really pretty on that dandelion. She is called Seeing is Believing, LAV 380. And I'll be using an older dandelion set, LAV 166. I will be using ink blending brushes along with some colored pencils, and I chose just 3 colors that match the inks that I'll be using. I am going to be using this Novo glitter gloss. I will be using a bone folder, a 2-inch mask for the moon or the sun, whatever you want to call that. I will be using some Sweet Poppy low-tack tape. I like this the best, but any low-tack tape would work. The adhesive that I like to use is the Art Glitter Designers Dry Clear Adhesive. I will be using a stencil from Lavinia. This one is called Laurel. And I am going to be using my stamping positioner from Misty along with a acrylic block. I like this long block for using the border stamps. Okay, let me take a moment just to show you some examples. I get so many questions from people wondering, what in the world can you do with a border stamp? So one of the easiest things, and the first thing I thought of when I saw these, was to literally create a border on one side of my card. And that's what I've done here. Just simply created a border. I actually did a watercolor effect with the ink. I had used the lumberjack red, spritzed it with some water so that I didn't get a perfect stamp. I wanted it to be more like a watercolor. Okay, so there's one example. Here's another example where I just took a separate piece of white card and I created a background by simply stamping that border 3 different times. Then I traced a shape and cut it out. A really easy thing to make with the border stamps are bookmarkers. If you are a part of our exchanges, this is something we are going to exchange in the near future. And they are just about the perfect size for a bookmarker. Next, here is an example of an ATC card. This is just some leftover ink that I used. And when I make my ATC cards, they are definitely made by using leftover inks. And I will demo that today for you. And today's card that I'm going to show you how to make is this card here, where we are going to use a few of the border stamps. You can see there's 4 of them here that I'm using. And I'll show you, it's not that hard. It's just actually a little bit of time. That's all it takes. Okay, let's get started with this project. So first, I'm going to bring in my card, and I'm going to grab that piece of masking paper. Now the masking paper has a side that is not sticky, another side that is covered with a clear sheet of acetate. It's very easy to peel off. And under there, this side has a very low-tack adhesive to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just eyeball this, trying to center that card underneath. I'm not worried about it being perfect by any means. And I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to sketch the sections, these 4 sections that I want to create for my landscape. Now, there's no way I can do this exactly the same, but I'm going to attempt to do it somewhat similar to the card. So I'm simply going to take my pencil and I'm going to draw a line right on that masking paper. And I'm going to create 4 sections. I'm going to have one here and one more. Okay, so as you can see, I have 4 separate sections drawn, and I am going to be able to use this entire sheet. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to grab a pair of scissors, and I'm going to simply cut out along those lines that I drew. I want to keep them in the order so that I don't forget which way they go. This is just like building a puzzle. Okay. And then lastly, I have this along with the sky, which I'm going to need that piece also. So now I'm going to build my puzzle. I'm going to remove the backing from here and adhere it to my card. This typically peels off really well. And save these acetate pieces because a lot of times this masking paper can be reused. So I'm going to line this up on the bottom edge of the card, and I will press firmly. And I will do the same thing with the next piece. Naturally, this is going to give me a little bit of a issue peeling out. There it goes. Just got to get your fingernail underneath that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the right edge so that I know I have this pretty much built like the exact puzzle. I'm doing my best not to leave a gap in between each of the pieces. So this can be a little fiddly. So just take your time. Lining up the edge and one more piece of the puzzle here makes it a lot simpler. But again, you know what? Don't worry if it's not 100%. Okay, so the second piece is on. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue to line this up. Now, being that I'm working on the left side, I'm going to use the left edge. And I'm talking about this edge here. I'm going to use that left edge to line up. There, that one went on a lot quicker. Now back to the right edge, and I will add this piece. There we go. Lining up my edge, and I'll pick another point to focus on. All right, oops, that one's a little bit off. That I don't want. Let me move that a hair. Here we go. And lastly, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the sections on here. Lastly, I'm going to add the sky. That one will pop off easily. Let me get that lined up. Again with the edge. And I'll focus on another point to get this as close as possible. Ink blending will save you if they're not lined up perfectly. This one I'm going to redo because it's kind of lined up just a tad bit off, and I want that to be a little bit better. Oh, there, that's much better. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to work from the bottom to the top. So my bottom piece, what I used was, let me grab it. This is LAV 321. This is the one that swirls with the flowers. Let me remove the backing from here. And this is why I like using this long, thin acrylic block, because the entire thing fits on here nicely. Now, before I stamp, what I'm going to do is carefully lift my card from my work surface. Now, naturally, I could have done this first and brought this in, but I didn't. I just have a stack of some old magazines that I had here. I'm trying to create a softer surface. The first time I did this, I did it on my hard flat surface. And some of the stamping was questionable, let me put that way. I didn't do a great job. So I found by stamping on a softer surface, I get a better print. So starting here on the bottom, I'm going to carefully peel that off, exposing only this section. I'm going to set that piece to the side because I'm going to need it again. I'm using the Lavinia Elements Ink in Olive. And as you can see, I'm going to be stamping in this open area. Now, this isn't going to fit all the way into the corner because of the way I drew it this time, but that's okay because I'll be able to come in here and just add a touch of that border stamp to even it out. Now, the element inks are extremely wet, so I caution you as to how much pressure you put onto the stamp itself. Now, if you want really dark images, then you can go right ahead and push as hard as you want to get a lot of heavy ink on there. I found I like just taking a blending brush and tapping over this lightly just to remove a little bit of the excess ink. And I'm going to align this up to get the majority of this stamp in that section. Pressing down very firmly, and I mean I am pushing hard, especially along that masking paper. You will see if you do not press firmly, you are not going to get a good stamp along that paper. So take your time and press firmly. Now, one thing I did find out, that if I didn't get a good image, say there was too much of a gap, and it will happen, believe me, it's going to happen today as I'm doing this for you. All I'm doing is re-inking a little bit of this stamp right now because I want to fill in this corner. I'm going to spread that with the brush a little bit, tap, and I'm going to fill in a little bit here. Now, I'm not too worried if I don't get a perfect print because I'll be blending around those corners at the end. But as I was saying, you want to make sure you press firmly along that edge. See, that filled it in nicely. Now, I'm going to slide this to the side. I don't like to waste ink. So as you can see, there's a little bit of ink on this stamp. I'm going to spritz it with water, come in with the ATC card, and I'm going to just press the card onto that stamp to pick up that excess ink. I'll set this aside to dry, and someday I will turn that into an ATC card that I want to trade. See, that's how simple ATC cards are to make, especially if you're like me and you don't want to waste your ink. That's just the greatest way. Okay, so let me bring that card back in. It looks like a hot mess, I know. but be patient with me here, and I'll show you how this works. Now, being that this ink could be really wet, this masking paper may have a little bit of difficulty sticking, but let's see how it's going to work. So I'm just realigning this edge up like I did initially. Now this is where the low-tack tape comes into play. If this starts to peel back, then I use a piece of low-tack tape just to hold it down. But right now it's behaving, so we're going to move on to the next section. I'm going to just carefully remove. Remember, I need to save this. I don't want to throw that away. And my next section, I will be stamping in the blue atoll, and I am going to use the border stamp that is called the Zen border. That's LAV 366. So let me get that peeled off. I'm going to place it onto my acrylic block. I'm going to add that blue atoll ink all over. Now this one is super juicy, so I am definitely going to use my blending brush just to tap off a little excess. Okay, that should be good. You can even swirl it around lightly. Now I'm going to add this, making sure that I cover up as much of that section as I can. Pressing down firmly. Remember, along those edges, you really want to press hard so that you get ink right up on the edge. Now, what I started to say, and I kind of lost my train of thought, with these stamps, when I remove this, if I don't get a really nice, even amount of ink in that area, these stamps are super easy to realign so that you could actually almost act like your Misty tool does. This is so simple to do. Ask me how I know. Okay, here you can see I have a little bit of white showing on that edge. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to fill it in. But what you can do is you could re-ink, realign, and stamp again. But that's that area I was telling you about that you have to press super hard so that you get up against that edge. But I also found there's ways around that too. Okay, here we go again. So I've got all this excess ink. I'm going to come in with another ATC card. And I just randomly put this down, pick up this ink, and that'll be ready for another ATC card in the future. Now, getting a good habit here as far as cleaning your stamps. My cloth is just wet with water. There's no other solution on here. And I am removing this ink. That's a water-based ink, the Elements, so it really cleans up nicely. Making sure my fingerprints are gone. Okay, let's move on to the next section. So as you can see, all I'm going to do is repeat the same process. I'm going to bring in that piece that I removed, realign it the best I can here. This is that corner piece that gave me a little trouble. But there, that's lined up. Now, the third piece, let me remove this. Now, as you can see, it's a little wetter here, so that's starting to peel up a bit, but I'm not stamping in that area, so I'm going to be fine with that. The next color I'm using over here is the Russet Orange in the Elements ink, and the stamp that I am using, this is the one with the big daisy-like flowers. This is the the Flower Border 367. Let me get that onto my acrylic block. Going to add my orange. This one's super juicy still also. So in comes that blending brush. I'm just going to take some of the excess off, rub a little bit of it in, and then place it over that section. This one looks good right about there. So again, pressing hard, especially along those edges. If you are familiar with the retiform technique, this is basically what retiform is. So that's something you can look up if you want to see that technique. Okay, I have a large area here that I'm not pleased with. So let me show you how easy this is to realign. So I'm going to hover over top of that stamped image, lay this back down gently, and press harder in that particular area where the ink didn't go. And hopefully I'll get a little more in that section, which I did. So see, it works really well to realign. So I've got another ATC coming up here. This Elements ink, it just goes and goes and goes forever. You can just get so much use, so much yardage out of it. I could even spray that again and still pick up more ink. So there, again, another ATC card for a later date. Cleaning this off. Now, as you can see, this stamp has been stained. So anything like oranges, reds, they have a tendency to stain your stamps, but it's not to worry because they still work perfectly fine. All right, let's bring that back in. It's a hot mess now, but believe me, it's all going to come together here. Let me line this back up. All right, this is sticking down really well. I'm happy tonight. I must have the right amount of humidity in my house that it's not peeling up and things are drying quicker. Okay, lastly, Sundance Elements ink. And I will be using the Ivy border. This is LAV 320. Let's get that on the acrylic block. Peeling up a little bit, but that's okay where it's at. Well, let me get this on the block better. I'm sorry if this is difficult to see with all those papers underneath. But it is a game changer if you're stamping onto a soft surface for this technique. Okay, let's get that last piece on here. Okay. Now, my Sundance is well loved and well used. So this one, you see, I didn't use the blending brush to take off excess ink just because it's not as wet. So that's something you'll have to just learn as you go on, how wet your inks are, because you may not have to do it at all. Okay, let's see if we got a close-up. Okay, there's a little area here. That's a little too light for me, so I am going to realign. As you can see, it's pretty easy to line these up. I'm going to give a little harder of a press here along the edge. There, I got a little more ink in there. That's great. And one more quick. Look how, I didn't think there was any ink left on here. And look how much ink came to the surface when I put that water on there. That's why I like these element inks so much. All right. Again, another great ATC card for a future day. All right, let me get rid of this. And we're going to move on to the next section. Now I'll be able to remove my card from this mess underneath to make it easier for you to see. Let me set that to the side. Okay, so here we are. I am going to simply remove this top piece now. And I'm going to replace this piece here over the yellow. And I'm coming in with the Laurel stencil. And I'm very lightly going to place that stencil onto the sky. And I'm just very lightly going to use my orange brush and softly, ever so softly, go over this stencil. Now, when you have stencils that have these loose parts, it's always best for your brush to be going in the direction, let's say, of that particular leaf. That way you won't be picking it up. Okay, let me just get a little more color here. And you noticed I didn't re-ink anything. I just left this as it was. And I just have a very, very light background. And that is all I wanted. To clean your stencils, the same thing. Just some water on a wet cloth. And again, when you have a stencil that is so delicate as this, that have, you know, leaves that can be lifted up, you don't want to bend any of those tips. So always wipe in the direction of that leaf as not to bend any of that stencil. All right. I believe it's time for the big reveal. Let me take off all these pieces. And we will see our base. Okay, there you have it. Now, I'm not worried at all that these aren't butted up exactly against one another. I'll show you how we're going to take care of that in a moment. I'm going to bring in the Misty now. And I'm going to start to put my stamps in place. Let's start first with the beautiful fairy, Seeing is Believing. And I'm going to place her so that it looks like her flower is actually coming out of that green section. So let me get her at the right angle that I like. I don't want to make it look like she's falling off the flower. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Get that in. VersaFine Claire Nocturne for this stamp. I want to get a nice even coat on her. What's nice about using the Misty is if I don't get an image that I am happy with, then I can re-stamp and it's already in the proper position. I'm using an air hockey puck here to apply pressure to my stamp. And let's see how we did. All right, good. I'm very pleased with that. I will not have to re-stamp. I will just wipe her off the same way I wipe everything else off, just with water on a microfiber cloth. All right, that's good. Now for the dandelions. Okay, like I said before, this is an oldie but goodie. I really like the dandelions that we have in the Lavinia line. But this one in particular, I really like a lot. What's nice is you can bend these stems, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I want this to look like it's kind of bending, kind of like the other one. Let's say the wind might be blowing. So once I get it onto my Misty door, I can go in and I can bend that stem a little deeper. So it's not straight up and down. I think I'm happy with that. Again, VersaFine Claire in Nocturne. Get that in place. And I'm going to lift my card up just a little bit here. I'm going to move it towards the top to give me some more room to work here at the base. I want to add one more dandelion, but I want this one to look shorter. So I'm going to get it lined up where I like it. And I'll show you a little trick that a friend taught me, oh, long time ago. Get one of your gel marker, your jelly roll pens, and you can mark. Now, you can go ahead and ink the entire thing. No big deal. I'm trying to keep this surface clean. So you take this marker right on the back of your card, or on the back of your stamp, okay? It's a little wet, no big deal. Okay, and then when you place your ink onto that stamp, you know not to go below that line that you just drew. Okay. There we go. I did get a little bit there, but that's okay. But that's the idea to that trick, is so that you're not wasting a lot of ink. And that line will wash right off of the back of your stamp. And you know, it's a good idea periodically to clean off the back of your stamp the same way that you do the front of the stamp, because these will lose their stick in time. And if simply water is not doing the trick, then put these in your sink with some soapy water and give them a good wash and let them air dry naturally. And then these will resume being as sticky as you need them. All right, I'm going to bring in the other flower from the set here, and I'm going to place that about here. Again, I'm going to do my little mark. Add the Nocturne ink. I want to wipe off that ink below that pink line that I drew. Okay, perfect that time around. All right, now that I have that one done, I'm going to bring in the very last flower of that set. Okay, I want that one to bend out a little bit, so I'm going to get the head where I want it. And then I'm going to bend that stem. All right, I forgot to mark it, so I'm going to mark it right on my Misty. That'll work just as well as marking on the stamp. And let me add the ink down to that pink mark, get the flower head stamped. Oops, got a little happy there. All right, let's press that in place. There we go. And one last flower, and that's going on the other side. Okay, this time let me get the stamp, even though that worked pretty well, didn't it, on the back of the Misty. Same idea. Okay, VersaFine Clair, down to that pink line that I drew. Here I went below it, so I just need to wipe off the excess. Give it a stamp. And my flowers are all in place. All right, let me get that stamp cleaned off quickly, and we'll move on. Okay, done with my Misty. I'm going to get that 2-inch circle mask. I'm going to place it somewhat behind, or somewhat over top of our fairy. I just want a very light shadow of the sun or the moon, whatever you want to call this. I am going to ink up just a little bit. Starting in the center, I'm going to just flick out lightly till I can see some of that outline. I'll do that all the way around. Try to hold that firmly so that it's not slipping on you. Okay, you can remove it and see if that's enough. And for me, that's enough because I really just wanted this to be very faint. So just like this, treat this just like any other stencil. Wipe this off. That way it's ready for the next time around. Okay, what I'm going to do now is simply color in her wings. And what I like to do is I just choose colors that I'm working with already. So I found some colors that I thought matched rather well. I am using polychromos, but you do not need to use an expensive colored pencil. You can use anything you have in your stash. They all work well. So I typically take a dark color at the base and I flick my color onto the wing. And I just do that in each section, flicking the color, trying to get the darkest of the shade towards the base of that section of each leaf, listen to me, of each feather section. Then what I'll do is I'm going to come in with the next color, which I used the green next. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to flick over the sections that are still opened, still white. There's no exact science to this, believe me. I just kind of do my own thing, and it usually works out pretty good for my feathers. My goodness, feathers on the mind for the wings. So just add nice coordinating colors to your wings. And then the tips of the wings I will do in this brighter yellow. Okay, now lastly, what I like to do on all my wings is put a little bit of shimmer to them. And to do that today, I am using the Novo glitter gloss pen. And this is just clear, very light amount of glitter comes out. I'll hold it up. Maybe the light will give a little bit of a reflection so that you can see how this... Just for me, I'm not a glitter person, so for me this is perfect because it's just the smallest amount. I don't know if you can see if I'm catching any of the glitter, but believe me, it's there. It's just such a minimal amount. Okay, lastly, I'm going to come in with those colored pencils again. And I'm going to try to define each of these areas just a little bit more. Just the edge, I'm running my green pencil over. And to me, this kind of gives a little bit of a shadow to the top of each, if we want to call these hills. Just gives a little bit there. Going to add a little more green in this area, just to ground that flower along with this one. Now, for the orange, I'm just going to run a very thin line of this. And I didn't have a good blue to match, so that's why I'm going to just use the orange here, just to fill that in a little bit. And to be honest, that works pretty good, I think. That's good enough. Let me darken this just a little bit here for a little bit of a shadow effect. And same thing here, not having a good blue to match that, I'm just going to fill in that gap with a little bit of yellow. Same thing here, I'm just going to outline this area just a little bit. And that's it in a nutshell, guys. That's pretty much it for the card. Now, all I need to do is attach this to my card base, which I like to use a bone folder to make a nice crease. Using the Art Glitter Designer Dry Clear Glue, I will add a thin bead of glue around the edge. And this is a real nice thin bead that comes out. I don't like to get too close to the edge if I can help myself, because I don't want any of that glue oozing out. And if I do get too close, I just take my finger and rub that excess away from the edge. center this to the top of my card. You do have a few seconds to realign it if you don't get it down perfectly or where you like. And there you have it. Fun card just made with those border stamps. Here's my original. Here's the one we did together. Apparently, my orange, when I used it, had a little bit of red in it on that one, but that's okay. I like the way this background came out also. They're both fine. So guys, if you're going to give this a go, you know the routine. Try it, tag me in your post, place it in our Facebook group so we all can see what you did. And remember, a lot of these are retiring, so you want to jump on them if you're interested in trying something like this. As always, thank you so much for watching. You know, I totally appreciate that, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.